Thailand is seeing fewer and fewer foreign faces.
It's over, it's done.
Is this the beginning of the end for Western tourism in Thailand?
Today I want to talk about something that sounds simple, but really isn't. Thailand tourism. I'm not going to be talking about food. I just happen to be doing my weekly cool. You probably heard the statistics online already. 35 million tourists visited last year, or tourism is nothing, it's only 12% of Thailand's GDP. Maybe you've heard the opposite. Thailand is nothing without tourism, at which point these statements are affirmed with a couple of random stats and a lot of confidence. Well, sometimes it's no stats or graphs at all, and simply the type of confidence that makes Dunning and Kruger pay attention. But when you start to look closely, you'll realize that even the people supplying the numbers being quoted have their arguments built on incredibly shaky foundations. And the people repeating them, whether online or in forums, often haven't asked the most basic question. Where do these Thailand tourism numbers being quoted actually come from? When Thailand tourism revenue is discussed, it is normally referred to using the term tourism receipts, yet no one seems to question what these receipts actually are. They just refer to the numbers the government is reporting as gospel. But Thailand's tourism receipts refer to the estimated total amount of money spent by international tourists while visiting the country. This includes spending on hotels, food, transportation, shopping, entertainment, and even some longer-term expenditure like medical tourism. These receipts are often used to compare year by year performances or Thailand's competitiveness with other travel destinations. However, do you know how these numbers are generated? Well, if you've ever been asked to complete a survey when exiting the airport in Thailand, you might have an idea because you are the source of the numbers. Tourists at airports in Thailand are asked to estimate how much they spent during their stay here, which is massively prone to error. It's forgetfulness and underreporting, especially when cash transactions are involved. Moreover, the sample sizes of these surveys are generally incredibly small and not representative of the diverse range of visitors, the lengths of stay, or the types of trips that tourists in Thailand are generally undertaking. Not only are these statistics based on an incredibly small data sample, but that's not even considering the biases thrown into the surveys. After all, what type of people actually participate in a survey at an airport? I remember when I was asked to participate while I was 5 steps away from ascending the escalators to immigration at Suvarnabhumi and carting around 2 suitcases, a laptop bag, and everything else I had on me. And can you imagine that I said yes? No way. So how many families with kids can you imagine saying like, all right, let's just drop everything that we're doing right now and review our holiday for these total strangers? And what time of the day are the survey staff working? Most businessmen will be arriving out of work hours, and how many people coming to Thailand don't really want to disclose what and how much they're spending to the government. You get some pretty paranoid people coming here who want absolutely no trace of what they're doing in Thailand being documented anywhere. Then there's the surveyors themselves. What languages do they speak? Are they told to focus on specific types of tourists? How confident are they in approaching people? How many surveys are they doing per day? And what are the surveyors like at gathering and collecting the data that they receive? And while we're on biases, how many men leaving Thailand do you know that would bullshit their asses off on how much they spent here on a survey being asked to them by a pretty Thai woman thinking it's going to impress her? It's one of the biggest problems with the entire process. Self-reported data is unreliable. It's like trying to guess how healthy a nation is based on estimating how many vegetables they ate in an entire year. People forget, people fudge numbers, and just like voting, not everyone even fills out the form correctly. Let's not forget the repeat entry problem with Thailand. A tourist who does a visa run and re-enters Thailand, they're counted twice. And someone who stays in the kingdom for 3 days gets the same statistical weight as someone who stayed here for 3 months. You could have one big-ass spending retiree pumping 100,000 baht a month into the economy and 3 budget backpackers spending 10,000 baht in total. The system will treat them as equals. So when someone throws out a number like Thailand's made 2 trillion baht from tourism, you have to understand that someone sat in a room and based that figure on what a hungover Joe Blow at the airport told someone, probably only understood 30% of what they're actually saying. The level of biases in this approach are obviously off the chart. So when I hear people saying tourist numbers are down, but revenue is up, people are finally starting to understand that Chinese tourists don't spend like Phalangs do. All I can think is, praise the Lord and pass the ipecac. You'll often hear people say now, typically expats, that tourism is not that important anymore in Thailand. It's only about 11 or 12% of Thailand's GDP. Manufacturing and agriculture makes up a much higher percentage. And yeah, at a national level, that might be true, but that stat is deeply misleading. GDP isn't evenly spread across the entire country. Most of Thailand's manufacturing comes from a few provinces, Chonburi, Rayong, and agriculture is mostly centered in Isan and the north. Tourism is the lifeblood of dozens of cities and islands in Thailand. In Phuket, estimates have 85 to 90% of the local economic activity being directly or indirectly tied to tourism. In Pattaya, it's a very similar situation. If you remove foreign visitors, just like we saw during COVID, the entire service economy of the city grinds to a halt. Chiang Mai's inner city also lives off international tourism, and even Ratchaprasong or Sukhumvit areas are filled with hotels, malls, and nightlife venues built around tourist flows in Bangkok. So when tourism drops, it's not just a percentage on a chart or 12 out of 100 people per area that get affected. It's entire cities in Thailand that will feel it. Families, employees, street vendors, taxi drivers, that dude in the bathroom that you make sure that you keep an eye on when you're washing your hands to make sure he doesn't give you a massage. Everybody in these tourist areas get affected. I remember how terrible the situation was in places like Pattaya and Phuket during COVID. Majority of businesses shuttered, lines of people were waiting up for food every day, homelessness was exploding. Yet I only live an hour north of Pattaya and the devastation down there felt like it was a world away from me. The reason being is because nearly every Thai person I know in my area wasn't affected at all, as most work for manufacturing companies that stayed open during COVID. So while it is true that tourism may represent less than 15% of Thailand's GDP, let's firstly not forget how much of that is cash-based that goes unrecorded. But mainly remember that national economies aren't equally distributed, and treating them like their effects would be absolute madness. So if these surveys aren't reliable and GDP isn't a great gauge of how important tourism is to many regions of Thailand, what's a better way to measure tourism? Well, if you're trying to understand the real impact of tourism in Thailand and not just what people say at the airport, I'd probably start by looking at the ripple effects. First, check the employment trends. Are hotels hiring again? Are bars in Pattaya looking for staff? Are domestic airlines adding routes? When tourism is doing well, those numbers always rise. When it's not, people lose jobs and they lose jobs fast. It's a real world metric, it's harder to fake. For example, Australia's Jetstar airline is adding 120,000 new seats per year between Japan, South Korea, and Thailand. They put it down to the White Lotus effect. And whatever it is, no airline is going to purposely lose millions on additional routes to Thailand if demand is decreasing. Second, look at business activity. New cafes popping up in Chiang Mai's Old Town, or massage shops reopening in Phuket. There are more Grab drivers on the road nowadays. Or even more tellingly, are long-standing businesses disappearing? Because if businesses that survived COVID are suddenly closing, it says a lot more than a pie chart ever could. Third, and this is one that I really can't believe they don't do already, loan defaults and financial stress in tourist-dependent regions. If you want to see the real heartbeat of places like Krabi or Samui, study who is missing loan repayments and look at which hotels are up for sale. If banks are suddenly flooded with overdue loans in tourist zones, you don't need to ask how tourism is doing. The data will speak for itself. Real estate is also another one. If tourism's strong, the talk of foreign investment in property increases a lot. Russians buying condos in Pattaya, Chinese buyers in Bangkok, Falangs buying their girlfriend's land in Isan. Whereas if tourism is tanking, properties sit empty, construction halts, and bar girls stay at home with their mum. Until the accuracy of all this data being espoused as truth is addressed, excuse me if I take it all with a grain of salt and look at the real world activities taking place here. And I'm not talking about anecdotal, oh, I visited Pattaya last week and man, it was dead. Okay, but where in Pattaya did you go? What businesses did you visit? How much of the area did you see? What time were you there? What are your past experiences in Pattaya? I mean, anyone who's been to Pattaya on New Year's or the fireworks festival or during Songkran, compared to on a weeknight pissing down with rain in June, should realize that town's capacity can change quicker than a drag queen at a cabaret show. Of course, making up bullshit theories with no substance for clicks and views usually does have much more of a payoff to it though, doesn't it? On that note, now let's talk about YouTubers. Credit where it's due, some YouTubers seem to be genuinely trying to show what life is like here for interested people outside of the country. Here's the problem. Most people making videos about Thai tourism are pulling from one or two surface level stats, running with it, and then adding their own highly biased commentary. Ever hear someone say, look at Soy Cowboy, it's empty, that must mean tourism is dead, or there's more Russians here than Chinese, so that means China hasn't come back yet. It's simply one or two stats before 10 minutes of anecdotal off-the-cuff rambling. It's not journalism, it's just an opinion. Beyond that, they often leave out all the context that actually explains what's going on here. I mean, is it me, or has no YouTuber ever experienced a low season before this year? But even beyond that, there are other factors that remain outside of seasonality. For example, while just a tiny change to Thailand's visa requirements for China and India can affect tourism numbers immensely, sometimes Thailand's policies don't have to change at all to affect tourism from either of these countries. For example, a Chinese actor being kidnapped in Bangkok in January probably had the same effect as Thailand creating a 5,000 baht entry fee for Chinese travelers. Chinese dipped out en masse and haven't really forgotten and forgiven as much as expected yet. Then there's foreign political and economic factors Thailand has absolutely no control over that are taking place in other countries. Can't blame Thailand every time a European country goes bankrupt, the US economy nosedives, or the Middle East decides to play fuck you, here's some missiles. Tourism doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can't just say Thailand is struggling unless you compare it to Vietnam or Malaysia or Bali. And even then, sometimes all of Southeast Asia is struggling because of airline shortages, oil prices, regional weather, or geopolitical tensions. So when you hear someone online say Thailand's booming or Thailand's dying, like we're seeing a lot right now, ask these questions first. Based on what data, compared to who, over what time period, and what else is going on in the world? Then lastly, ask yourself how any of this affects you. Can you still afford to travel here? Will you then come here? Are the businesses that you want to frequent here open and busy? Will it be affordable and enjoyable? Because unless these questions are being asked, all of this online noise is just hyperbolic content to monetize your outcries. So yeah, Thai tourism is difficult to measure, it's misunderstood, and a lot of what we think we know definitely isn't backed by evidence. So until they figure out how to effectively present the figures, just remember the truth isn't always in the numbers, sometimes it's in the noise behind them. I'm Logan in Thailand, thanks for watching.